Hello and welcome to another CanIndian Channel feature. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing a book called Creativity Inc. by Ed Catmull. The book sets out to explain how Pixar became one of the world's most loved filmmaker. Its co-founder, Ed Catmull, charts the company's rise in tandem with his own, from his childhood dream of becoming Disney animator to his current position as the president of Disney and Pixar Animation Studio. What I really liked about this book is that it ties in completing stories about effective leadership. Catmull separates the book into 4 parts. Getting started, where he explains on Pixar creation. Building and sustaining, where the emphasis was after Pixar enjoyed success with Toy Story and the largest IPO in 1995 and how they were able to sustain the growth. Number 3, which is testing what we know, which was mainly Pixar's mistakes. And lastly, number 4, merger with Disney. Ed used to work for George Lucas Films and was tasked to design a specialized software for animation to be used in George Lucas's films. The name Pixar was developed as a combination of Spanish verb of making pictures and laser. Another co-founder of Pixar was John Lasseter, who had just lost his job at Disney, and Ed asked him if he could come work at Pixar. During this time, Disney animation had plateaued, with no significant advances in animation technology. In 1983, George Lucas and his wife Maria split up, and the divorce settlement would significantly affect the cash flow for Lucasfilms. Under pressure to consolidate his investment, George decided to sell Pixar films. Enter Steve Jobs. Ed first met Steve Jobs in 1985, when Steve was a part of Apple Computers. Ed was uneasy of Steve, as he felt Steve had a forceful personality. Right after the meeting, Steve had a fallout with Apple CEO John Sculley and was removed from Apple. Steve prodded on his thought of buying Pixar again. However, his vision was to build Pixar into a hardware manufacturing company to build next-generation home computers to compete with Apple. Ed politely declined to be included in Steve's vision. Steve then went to create a personal computer company called Next. A few months later, Steve met with Ed again and decided to change his vision for Pixar to develop cutting-edge animation software, which was accepted by Ed and finally ended up purchasing Pixar from George Lucas for about $5 million. Initially, Pixar was losing money at a rapid pace. However, Steve kept pouring his own money to keep Pixar afloat. He used to rarely visit the company and let Ed and John handle the direction of Pixar. At that point of time, Steve did not know what to make out of Pixar. He was sure that Pixar would do something cool and that he had the correct team to execute it. Luckily, Disney noticed Pixar's talent and decided to contract Pixar to make feature films and let Disney distribute it. Under Steve's guidance and John's creative leadership, Pixar was able to create Toy Story, which ended up shattering records at box office, and in 1995, Pixar opened to IPO, largest IPO for that year. Later throughout the book, Ed talks about how other successful ideas that rolled on to create many more successful movies. During this time, Pixar grew at a rapid pace, both in terms of technology and larger workforce. With a larger workforce came with its own set of problems and how Ed and John addressed them. The 2 main takeaways from this book are: number 1, after the success of Toy Story, the studio began working on a script for a sequel. The draft version of the script was ready, and after John and Ed, along with other people from the group, heard it, they were quite not satisfied. Ed felt that due to the strict budget and timeline, it had stifled the creativity of the group. The group was asked to recreate the script and animation, which seemed like a major endeavor. Disney sensed this as a financial risk. However, the Pixar group merely stated that the sequel had to live up to the high standards. They were correct. The sequel was another massive hit at the box office. So the golden nugget here is that you should always have extremely high standards and don't let anything get to lower your standards. Number 2, I wanted to highlight on how Ed and John try to instill a culture of candor information sharing. Ed stated, the difference between candor and honesty is candor is forthright or frankness, not so different from honesty. The word communicates not just telling the truth, telling but with a lack of reserve. Ed explains that people have an easier time talking about their level of candor because they don't think they'll be punished for admitting that they sometimes hold their tongues. To all my viewers, please remember that this is very essential to comprehend if you intend to start a business and envision having a group of people working for you. Ed further stated that you cannot address the obstacle to candor until people feel free to say that they exist, and using the word honesty only makes it harder to talk about those barriers. Interestingly, there's a whole chapter on honesty and candor. Furthermore, Ed states, "Believe me, you don't want to be a company where there's more candor in the hallways than in the rooms where fundamental ideas or matters of policy are being hashed out. Seek out people who are willing to level with you, and when you find them, hold them close," he stated. Further through the chapters, the book describes the merger between Disney and Pixar. Disney purchased Pixar for $7.4 billion and under Steve's request, let Ed and John manage the creative division for Disney and Pixar. After the merger, Ed and John inculcated similar strategies but ensured that the both companies worked separately. After Lion King, Disney had not made a successful box office impact, and after the merger, they were back to the series of hit movies like Wreck-It Ralph and Frozen. Ed stated that we had applied a principle to a dysfunctional group and has changed them, unleashing their creative potential. They had become a cohesive team stocked with standout talent. This brought Disney animation to a new level. Ed further stated that we had a creative roster that was good as the one at Pixar, yet quite different. The studio Walt Disney had built had become worthy of him once again, said Ed. This book has been craftfully written by Amy Wallace. It beautifully explains information from Ed, John, Steve in a similar magical way as the Pixar movies. Although the movies made by Pixar are focused on children, the details and the thought process is insane. For example, the writers actually spent some time understanding the chef's kitchen during the making of Ratatouille. On another instance, another group of writers spent weeks analyzing animals for the Up movie. Toy Story, Monsters, Incredibles, Up, Bolt, all these movies rekindles the kid inside us. No matter how old we get, I'm sure Pixar and Disney will continue to fascinate us. An excellent read, and I highly recommend you read this again to gain more in-depth understanding of the concept and the strategies I shared. I really hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to watch other sections of this channel where I discuss about other strategies and successful business people's life journeys. Remember, success leaves cues. Follow successful people, do what they did, and in turn, you'll be successful. This is CanIndian Channel signing off. Peace.